Hello, I am Remo Yesman from the Warframe Collective, and today we have an update on the whole Unity situation. So if you don't know what Unity is one of the most popular game development engines that is out right now. In fact, some of the best games that you most likely have played in recent years were probably developed on the Unity engine. Why does this matter? Well, a couple weeks ago, Unity announced pricing changes to their current pricing structure. The new price change would charge game developers 20 cents per download after the first initial 200K in revenue. The problem is this doesn't take into account what game developers spent on game development, as well as other fines and fees that might have been incurred during the game development process. On top of that, 20 cents per download doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if your game is on one of these free gaming services and your game is downloaded 500,000 times, for example, you would owe Unity $100,000. And oftentimes when your games are on these free gaming services, we see these games downloaded millions of times. On top of that, there are several game developers that like to put their game in charity packages such as Humble Bundle, and the Unity pricing changes didn't elaborate on how exactly they would go about dealing with that. Furthermore, Unity didn't even exactly specify how they're keeping track of the users installing and reinstalling their games. They didn't specify all this tracking data, probably because they're probably doing some illegal shit where they're collecting users' data and they're not giving users the option to opt out of it. But you know what? Every fucking tech company is doing that. Anyway, not only did Unity propose this price change, but they proposed this price change without any actual core updates to their engine. Whereas you see game engines like Unreal, they're constantly innovating and offering new features and updating their engine altogether. But Unity basically just wants more money. So obviously there was going to be a ton of fallout from this, and rightfully so. Also, one of the most egregious parts of all this is that these changes would run concurrent to whatever developers had already had projects developed using the Unity engine. So basically what that means is if you developed a game way back when using the Unity engine, your game would be on the hook for the new pricing changes and your game would be subject to them. And that's just absolute bullshit, man. Because you gotta think, what if you developed a game 10 years ago, but the game's still selling pretty well, and you don't wanna pay Unity's new pricing bullshit? What are you supposed to do? Just delete your game? It makes absolutely no sense. In response to this bullshit that Unity is trying to pull, a lot of developers are currently in the process of porting their games to new engines altogether, as well as I heard several game developers are coming together to explore options of class action legal suits. Because you have to think, game development is a long, strenuous process. A lot of game developers can't just simply port their game to a new engine. You have to think, if you're 2 years into game development, Unity knows that you can't just simply port your game to a new engine, and I'm pretty sure that was part of Unity's plan to trap developers into this pricing structure. But one of the most effective tactics that a lot of developers were using was turning off iron source monetization altogether, which basically means they're disabling microtransactions, and that directly hits Unity. Unity immediately feels that. Anyway, Unity had put out several PR statements, but I didn't cover them because they were all very akin to when a game developer fucks up and they put out some shit on Twitter that's like, oh, we're listening, or we missed the mark. It's an actual update, so this comes to us via Axios. The article states that after a backlash, Unity will no longer require creators to pay retroactive fees tied to game installations. Why it matters. The Unity drama had rocketed the video game industry, sending smaller creators into a panic about whether or not their game becoming popular would result in ruinous fees, driving the news. Unity, the company behind one of the most used game development technologies in the world, issued revised terms to its runtime plans in a blog post on Friday in an effort to quell 2 weeks of angers from customers. The post started with senior executive Mark Whitten stating, "I am sorry." Details: Unity's revised plan may still charge some teams with fees calculated off installations of their game, but the company is making the fee structure optional and more easily avoidable for smaller developers. In the new plan, smaller developers using Unity's fee personal plan won't be subject to the fee. Unity is allowing games making up to $200K in revenue to stay in the group, up from $100K. Larger developers using paid versions of Unity can avoid the fee by not switching to the newer version of Unity. If they do, developers can choose between paying the runtime fees tied to new user installations of their game or a 2.5% revenue share, figures that Unity says will be self-reported. Unity also went on to state that no game making less than $1 million in the trailing 12 months of revenue will be subject to that fee. So basically what that means is that basically raises the original threshold from 200,000 to $1 million. And that's assuming you're making over $1 million in under a 12-month time span. So this is where things currently stand with Unity. And it's funny how they didn't take out the runtime fee. They basically just say, oh, keep using the older version and don't upgrade to the newer version, which sounds ghetto as fuck if you ask me. And to be honest, I kind of think this was Unity's plan from the beginning, because one thing that companies do when they know they're about to do some bullshit and piss a bunch of people off is, number one, they'll start insider trading, when we've already seen that happen. And number two, and probably the most important thing, is they'll announce the shittiest version of the plan first, because by announcing the shittiest version first, that version gets all the backlash, so they can just make incremental walkbacks to the point where this is where we are, you know? You're not getting totally fucked over, but you're just getting kind of fucked over at this point, you know? You're not getting a whole bowl of shit, now it's just a quarter bowl of shit, so it's all good, right? This is basically like if your best friend tried to rob you, and then at the last second, he decided not to because he decided it was more morally unethical, but he still wanted to be your friend. You know, he still wants to maintain this friendship, you know? So, yeah, this is where we are, guys. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a beautiful day. That's the best thing you guys can do for me at this point. Anyway, this is Remo Yes Man signing out. Peace.